Welcome to episode 98. I'm Stuart McCullough, I'm the CEO of VHIA. And starting with this week's Industrial Roundup. And starting with community health. This week we'll be issuing the IR report to community health members, and just a reminder to members ahead of next week's HRIR managers meeting for community health that we'll be talking through the items that they want to place on the agenda for our special May meeting. Just a reminder that the May meeting will be longer and CEOs will be invited, and the subject for discussion will be the future strategies for community health enterprise bargaining. With respect to health services, the monthly HRIR meeting for rural and regional health services will occur this week, and that'll include an update with respect to the Doctors' Savings Schedule process. Members will be aware that on 26 February, the AMA requested time to consult with its members before the dispute returns to the Fair Work Commission in the first week of April. VHIA, for its part, is continuing to work with members to get their instructions on the content of those draft saved provisions schedules to ensure that there is no unnecessary delay. There is a Health and Allied SDP PWG scheduled for this week, and a big thanks to all those members who attended last week's Rural and Regional Forum for the Grampians region in Daylesford, and a reminder that the next Rural and Regional Forum is scheduled for this week. It's on March the 15th. It's for the Loddon Mallee region and in Inglewood. Other regional forums that are coming up include Hesse Rural Health for the Barwon region on 26 March, and Kilmore on the 28th of March for the Hume region, and then we'll be heading to Gippsland Southern Health on the 5th of April for the Gippsland region. The focus with respect to those forums will be on the bargaining framework, which sets out and explains the process for bargaining to members. For metropolitan members, we'll be discussing that at the Metro HRIR Managers Meeting. As always, all of our activities are summarised through the VHA Community app. That's it for this week's Industrial Roundup. It's time for the weekly update.
Welcome to the Weekly Update, where we go in depth with a particular topic. And joining me today is Workplace Relations Consultant Maria Kopilas. Welcome, Maria.
Thanks, Daniel.
So you've done this before. The first step of the podcast is to show us what the clue is for this week's podcast.
Sure.
Now, for those of people who are watching, would you mind holding that up to the screen? And for those that are listening, would you mind describing what the clue is?
So it's a clock with the small hand on the 2 and the big hand on the 6.
So what would you say is the theme for today's podcast?
Overtime penalties.
Overtime penalties. Unfortunately, Maria, that's incorrect. The time on the clock is
2:30.
And if you have 2:30, where should you go?
You go to the dentist.
You go to the dentist. So the topic for today's podcast is the dental nurse translation for the Community Health Agreement.
Okay, wonderful.
So before we start, it may be useful to update our members on the progress of the agreement that's in the Fair Work Commission.
Yep, I agree.
So I recall we submitted this agreement to the Fair Work Commission late last year.
That's correct. So following the successful ballot, VHIA submitted the agreement to the Fair Work Commission on behalf of the employees on 13th of November 2018.
Mm-hmm. So have we received an update from the Commission with respect to the approval of that agreement?
So we have. On 15th of February this year, we received correspondence from Deputy President Millhouse's Chambers advising of preliminary concerns regarding the review of the agreement.
So when you say preliminary concerns, should we be worried?
Not at all. So members would recall that the Fair Work Commission assesses each agreement against strict standards and often returns to us and the union to clarify certain items that they've identified.
So what were some of the preliminary concerns identified by the Commission?
So the Fair Work Commission were particularly interested in the Notice of Employee Representational Rights, also known as the NER, and the steps that our members took in issuing the NER to each employee that's proposed to be covered by the new agreement.
So I understand the Fair Work Commission has assessed the agreement pay rates and compared them to them on the ward?
So that's correct. We've requested that the Fair Work Commission provide us with their calculations so that we can confirm whether they've assessed the agreement rates correctly. They've indicated preliminary concerns, however, we'll await to receive these calculations before advising members whether an undertaking is necessary.
Sure. So, and briefly, what were some of the other items identified in the Fair Work Commission's preliminary review?
So the Fair Work Commission returned with questions about alignment between the agreement and terms relating to flexible work arrangements, annual leave, personal leave, community service leave and notice upon termination.
Okay. So we're at the stage where the Fair Work Commission has conducted their preliminary review. They've advised us of their preliminary concerns. We've provided a written response and sought some additional information from the Commission. So where to now?
So we will continue to assist the Fair Work Commission in approving the agreement. In the interim, we're continuing our work in the implementation phase of the agreement.
Okay. So we wouldn't have a timeline for approval just yet?
Not one that we could guarantee. If undertakings are required, we will require at the very least, approval from the employers that are covered by the agreement. My advice would be to keep your eyes on the VHIA community app and your inbox. If we require approval or undertakings, that will occur by bulletin.
Sure. So just to restate that, in the event that we require an undertaking or additional information from health services, we will be issuing that by bulletin.
Yeah.
And we would advise that members should keep an eye on the VHIA community app and their inbox for material and updates with respect to the enterprise agreement that's currently before the Commission.
Yes, that's right.
So today's discussion, and I guess moving now to the topic of today's discussion, is to guide our community health centre members in implementing the translation of dental nurses to the dental assistant structure.
So that's correct.
So why have we released this podcast prior to the agreement being approved?
So once the agreement is approved by the Fair Work Commission, community health centres will have 7 days before the agreement is operational. The translation will be effective back from the first full pay period on or after 1 October 2018.
So we have the added complexity of 2 wage increases in this agreement before 1 October 2018. How would you suggest a community health centre prepares for the translation?
So I think it might be easier if we reflect on the changes required on the table on the screen. So if we look at the date, so first full pay period on or after 8th of June 2018, there's a wage increase of 5% that will require a back payment. And then from 1 July 2018, there'll be a 3% increase, which is a further back payment period. And then 1 October, a first full pay period on or after 1 October 2018 will be the translation from dental nurse classification to dental assistant classification, and there'll be both a change in the classification code and a back payment.
So when the agreement comes into effect, the community health centres will be required to increase the dental nurses' wage by 5% from the first full pay period on or after the 8th of June 2018, then 3% from the first full pay period on or after 1 July 2018, and then translate that dental nurse to their respective dental assistant classification from the first full pay period on or after 1 October 2018.
Correct.
So can a community health centre implement this change prior to the approval of the agreement?
While nothing stops the Community Health Centre from implementing the change now, part of the Fair Work Commission's preliminary concerns involve pay rates for dental nurse trainee classifications and dental nurse level 2.
So a community health centre may, if they wish to do so, implement these changes now, but there's no guarantee that the wage rates are set in stone, and that the Commission has expressed at least a preliminary concern around the wage rates that we're still yet to finalise?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So thankfully the agreement does provide us though with a translation table. So Maria, could you take us through clause 109.1?
Sure. So for those who are watching the podcast, a copy of the table is visible on screen. However, for the benefit of those listening, I'll run through each of the translations. So for dental nurse level 1, the trainee classifications, they'll be moving to dental assistant trainee. Dental nurse level 2 will be a dental assistant grade 1 at pay point 1.1. Dental nurse level 3 will be a dental assistant grade 2 at pay point 2.1. Dental nurse level 4 will be a dental assistant grade 2.2. Dental nurse level 5 will be dental assistant grade 2.3, and the level 6 dental nurse will be dental assistant grade 2.4.
Okay. So based on the classification descriptors in Schedule D of the proposed agreement, most employees will be eligible for a classification increment upon successfully completing their annual appraisal in accordance with the internal Community Health Centre policy.
Yes, that's right. So most increments will occur annually and are limited to progression within pay points of the same grade.
So are there any exceptions to this rule?
So if we have a look at the summary table on the screen, you'll notice that there are some exceptions to this rule. For those at home, I'll provide a brief overview. So at the dental assistant grade 1 level, there are 2 classifications. So pay point 1.1 is for newly qualified dental assistants. Upon the completion of 12 months experience, they will automatically increment to a grade 2.1. For dental assistant grade 1.2, which are re-entry classifications for people that don't have experience within the last 3 years. After 12 months of completion, they will increment to a grade 2.2. At the grade 2 level, progression will be by annual appraisal in accordance with the Community Health Centre internal policies up until the classification of 2.5, where any employee that was employed on or after 12th September 2005 shall not progress beyond that point until they've completed a Certificate 3. For employees that do have the Certificate 3, they'll continue to progress until they hit their classification of 2.9. So progression to pay point 3.1 will be by direct appointment only. For those employees who were previously graded as 2.9 and have progressed to a grade 3 classification, they will be entitled to commence at a high level, and that's 3.2. Yearly progressions will be based on the employer's performance management process up until pay point 3.5, where they will freeze. Appointment to the grade 4 pay grade will be by direct appointment only, and much like the grade 3s, if the employee is classified as a grade 3.5 prior to moving to the grade 4 classification, they'll be entitled to commence at the pay point 4.2 instead of 4.1, and then progression will be based on annual appraisals in accordance with the internal policies.
Okay, so in terms of the translating pay rates, the agreement provides that employees will not experience any reduction in their ordinary remuneration.
That's right.
So what should the employer do if a situation arises where an employee would be paid less under the dental assistant structure?
Although it's unlikely to occur, if this were the case, the employer would need to salary maintain that employee to prevent a reduction in their ordinary wage.
So in addition to the translation, employers will no longer receive badge allowance. When will this change have effect?
So badge allowance was supposed to cease from the first full pay period on or after 1 October 2018, which is also referred to as the translation date. However, as the agreement is not yet in effect, the badge allowance will cease to apply from the operative date of the agreement.
So are there any other allowances which are discontinued for dental assistants beyond this date?
Yes, annual leave loading and experience payments will also cease to apply as the new structure has incorporated these allowances into the base rate of pay.
Okay, so if members want to access additional information, where could they find this?
So we're in the process of finalising the implementation guide, which was posted on the VHIA app in draft format. In addition to this material, we'll also be hosting an agreement implementation forum in March for members to attend. The forum will be confirmed and circulated shortly.
Wonderful. So thank you very much, Maria, for taking us through the changes for the community health agreement for the dental nurses to dental assistant structure.
Thanks, Daniel.